it's in print at last. Congratulations.
Come out rather well, I think. I found a misprint already.
No, I think it looks absolutely splendid. Well done, Father. Can I borrow this?
You can keep it. I've inscribed the first copy for you.
Thank you, Father. I shall take it to the city with me. I'm sure it's more interesting than the price of tea.
Oh, here. Your letter.
Oh, Bunny Newbury asked me to go shooting next weekend. I don't think I'll go.
Well, why not? You don't get out enough these days.
Father, you used to say I was always
dashing around.
Yes.
Yes, well, it has been rather a quiet household these past few months. Change of scene will do you good. Who else is going to be there?
No, he doesn't say. Just come down next weekend, bring your gun. Says he can supply me with a loader. I suppose I could take Edward, not that he knows anything about guns.
Why not take Hudson? He's an experienced loader. I always found him an excellent valet.
Hudson, he wouldn't want to come.
Why on earth not? He's country born and bred. Whenever your mother and I took him to Chatsworth, he was delighted.
Possibly, but he'd find it far beneath his dignity to accompany me. He and I haven't always seen eye to eye. Have we?
Well, now you have a very good opportunity to show you bear him no ill will. Ask him.
Oh, all right. I bet he won't want to come. He thinks this house would fall to pieces if he wasn't here to look after it.
Well, in that case, it'll do Hudson good to know that he's not indispensable.
Oh, and here is the key to my wine cellar, Mrs. Bridges. I don't feel like giving it into the hands of Edward. I've told him that if he needs it, he can ask you for it.
Very good, Mr. Hudson. Well, I hope you have a pleasant stay in Somerby Park. The Marquis of Newbury is quite young, I believe.
Only inherited last year, Mrs. Bridges. A rather rackety young gentleman.
Oh, dear.
Nevertheless, I expect to find a well-run household. As his lordship's mother, the Dowager Marchioness, is still in residence, his lordship being unmarried.
Well, it'll make a nice change for you, Mr. Hudson.
A change is not everything, Mrs. Bridges. I would much prefer to stay here at my post.
I don't really want to go at all.
Well, why do you go there?
Well, I just does, you know.
I sometimes think that people in society are like migrating birds. Well, they flock to Ascot, and they flock to Goodwood, and they flock to...
Scotland for the grouse and back to England for the pheasants.
Thank you. And they don't know why they do it. It's just that everyone else does.
Absolutely right. Shall I stay at home? Would you like me to?
Me? What have I got to do with it?
Don't you think you'll miss me?
I doubt it. With the amount of work your father's given me to do, I shall be much too busy. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I think his lordship is consulting with the innkeeper, my lord.
Why, Makepeace, I'll look after myself. Ah, Kitty and Cocky here already. What a surprise.
Charles, I'm so glad to see you. We quite thought that everyone was arriving this morning.
I suppose come to lunch and come to tea do look rather alike in Bunny's handwriting.
Yes, they do.
Talking of tea.
Yes, I really do think that poor old Makepeace is getting quite senile. I told him he could bring in tea a quarter of an hour ago.
Perhaps he felt he should wait for the rest of the guests, or even for our hostess.
Oh, Dolly will be having tea in her boudoir with Mr. Weinberg. So much smarter to have a tame Jew than a poodle, and much more useful. It's too funny to think of him sitting up there, taking tea and advising Dolly about her investments.
I wish he'd advise us about ours. Well, perhaps if Kitty's nice to him, he will.
Well, I admired his tweed suit. I never once said it made him look like a bookie's runner. I really don't know what more I can do.
I suppose darling Diana will be with us. Diana the huntress pursued by a bunny, that's quite a reversal.
Such a lovely girl. Not quite as young as she was. I suppose Bunny does mean to pop the question this weekend. Oh, Cocky. Now, what are you prowling about for?
Hunting for cigarettes. Your case is empty, is it?
What?
Yes, I think it is. Oh, I seem to have one after all. Isn't that lucky? There was a girl on the train. A very pretty little thing.
Oh, really?
Not very chatty. Golden hair and big blue eyes.
I say golden hair.
Yes, it could be the youngest Grey girl. So pretty and almost an idiot.
Anyone else coming?
Only James Bellamy.
Oh, James is coming. Good.
So embarrassing, his mother having gone down on the Titanic. One feels quite inhibited about mentioning water. Cocky, you had better drink soda with your whiskey while you are here.
Wasn't James Bellamy rather keen on Diana at one time? Was he? In that case, I wonder why Bunny's asked him.
Perhaps it was Diana's idea.
Perhaps it was.
car on the cover, Hudson.
Very good, sir. Cocky, we've got some tea, darling. No problem.
I say, Diana, I'm definitely glad you could come.
Are you, Bunny? It is rather good of me to come when you invite people like Kitty Danby. She's such a cat.
I suppose she is rather awful.
Yes, of course she is. So why'd you ask her?
I don't know, really.
Trouble is, Bunny, you never know why you do things. It gets rather boring.
Diana, darling. Hello, Trisha.
Hello, Diana.
Captain Bellamy, my lord.
Oh, Jimmy, I'm glad you could come. Now, Kitty, you know Jimmy Bellamy, don't you?
Yes, I do. But don't expect me to be polite to him. He behaved very badly when we were playing croquet at Wilton. He hit my ball into the shrubbery, and when I went to look for it, he didn't even follow me.
I apologise for my bad manners and my bad taste.
Hello, James.
Charles.
I didn't expect to see you. I thought you were a city gent now.
Well, even city gents get time off for good behaviour.
Now, look, Jimmy, I want you to meet Miss Gray. Now, he's going to tell you all about buying tea in India and shipping it back to England.
Oh, gosh, that sounds terribly interesting.
Well, I don't know about that. Hi,
Hello,
Hannah. I'm
James.
simply splendid. I didn't know you were going to be here. I thought you loathed shooting parties.
Did I? I must have forgotten. Come on, have a skull. They're delicious.
Hello, Cocky. Found the food, as usual.
You haven't got any tea, have you?
No.
No.
Well, quite right. They're absolutely delicious. Do you remember the cinnamon toast we used to have down at Southwell?
Yes. My first weekend there, and I was so frightened. Biting into a piece and spilling butter all down my dress. Your grandma was beastly about it.
She called you a hoyden.
What would she say about me now?
Just the same. Grandmother never changes.
I say, Jimmy, would you mind looking after Miss Gray? She doesn't know a soul, and she hasn't had anything to eat.
I'll beat her.
Have you heard from Elizabeth lately?
I had a postcard last week from one friend.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, she's got...
Mr. Hudson, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Breeze.
Very nice to see you, I'm sure.
Thank you. The chauffeur brought the car round, but there doesn't seem to be anyone to carry in the luggage.
Oh, there should be someone about. Oh, Henry, fetching Captain Bellamy's luggage, will you?
Rightio.
You, didn't come on the London train then?
No, we drove down in Captain Bellamy's motor car.
One of those little open things, is it?
It is.
Now, that's one thing I hate. You get blown about, your gentleman gets dusty, and what's the point of it all? The train gets there quicker and more comfortable. His lordship wanted me to go up to London with him in his motor last week. I said, much obliged, my lord, I said. But I think it will serve better if you drive, I go by train, and I'll be there in time to help get the luggage out of the dicky, if it hasn't fallen out on the way.
He wouldn't have talked like that to his late lordship, Mr. Breeze.
There's a good many things done in this house, Mr. Hudson, that wouldn't have suited his late lordship.
Oh, take care of that.
Here, watch it, Henry. Has Captain Spray rum all over his shirt.
I'll take the gun.
A gun room see here.
Thank you, Mr. Breeze.
Captain Bellamy's in the, blue dressing room, Henry.
Righto, Mr. Breeze.
You might show Mr. Hudson his room at the same time. He's in the west wing, next to Mr. Gilmore, Lord Charles's gentleman.
That bag is mine. You may carry that too, if you will.
Yes, sir. Well, very nice to have you with us, Mr. Hudson. Tea will be served shortly in the servants' hall. And we shall be very happy, I'm sure, to welcome you to the upper servants' sitting room after dinner.
Thank you, Mr. Breeze. Mr. Breeze,
Yes, Mr. Hudson?
does Mr. Makepeace take his tea in the servants' hall?
Mr. Makepeace? Do you know? He has his tea in the housekeeper's room.
Mrs. Kenton, I believe.
That's right.
Mr. Breeze, I wonder if you were good enough to have a message conveyed to Mrs. Kenton to the effect that Mr. Hudson would like a word with her.
Very good. Mr. Hudson? Now, Jimmy, you won't need a loader, will you?
No, thanks. I've got Hudson. Who's shooting?
Well, there's you, me, Cocky, Charlie, Max Weinberg, and one or two what my mother will call aborigines, you know, harmless locals.
Who on earth is that with your mother?
It's Max Weinberg.
He's a highly successful financier whose hobby, which he practices rather less successfully, is being an English gentleman.
Well, he used to advise the old king on his investments, and he now advises my mother. He likes coming down here for the shooting and the hunting, and that's how he gets paid for it.
He's got 2 pairs of Purdy's specials, both brand new, costing about £400.
So you can shoot 4 beaters without even reloading.
I have to put him on the outside, fiddle the drawer, then he can't do too much harm.
Good evening, Charles.
Evening, lady.
James, how very pleasant to see you here again.
Good evening, Lady Newbury.
How's your dear aunt?
Very well.
She and I had such an interesting time in the summer, helping Daisy Warwick organise teas for miners' wives. Poor things, they were quite overawed, but they did appreciate it so much. You must come and meet Max Weinberg. Now you're working in the city, he might be useful to you. Max, this is Captain Bellamy.
How do you do?
Captain Bellamy.
What an excellent speech your father made on the financial provisions of the Home Rule Bill.
Oh, I'm glad you approve.
I approve whenever a politician talks sense about money. Doesn't happen often.
Are you coming shooting with us tomorrow?
I might. I'd do almost anything to avoid spending the morning listening to Kitty Danby saying unpleasant things about people. If you disagree with her, you sound like a pig. If you don't, you feel ashamed afterwards.
Well, come and stand with me then. Like old times. Remember shooting rabbits with me down at Southwell?
Yes. I had to retrieve them. I got blood all over my dress, and there was a frightful row when I got home.
Make it sound as though I did absolutely nothing for the first 16 years of my life. It makes things difficult for you.
You did. So what are you going to do about it now?
James, Miss Gray and I are trying to decide whether or not your grandmother is related to her aunt, Lady Threadgold. Do come and settle it for us.
Oh, well, Lady Southwell, that is my grandmother.
Jimmy. What is? Well, I asked him down here for Miss Gray, and he's not
doing his duty.
When you ask people to stay, you expect them to fit in, do their bit. It doesn't make a pattern unless they keep in their place.
Where is my place?
Come in. Ah, Mr. Hudson, you're Captain Bellamy's valet, I believe. You wanted to speak to me?
Mrs. Kenton, I think there has been some very natural misunderstanding. I am not, strictly speaking, Captain Bellamy's valet. I hold the position of butler to Mr. Richard Bellamy and to the late Lady Marjorie Bellamy. Captain Bellamy's valet, Edward, would normally have accompanied him, but since there was shooting involved and Edward is not experienced with guns, I offered to take his place for this occasion and act as valet loader.
Well, I'm sure Captain Bellamy appreciates it. Nevertheless, you're in this household in the capacity of valet. And if you wish to complain to me about your place in the servants' hall...
Complain about my place? Oh, certainly not. As far as my place is concerned, I think I should be content to quote the old Scottish saying and remark that where the MacGregor sits is the head of the table. No, Mrs. Kenton. In my own house in Eaton Place, I am, as it were, master below stairs. I don't expect anyone to question my authority there, and I would not dream of questioning your authority here. It was merely that I felt that some slight embarrassment might arise later if it was realized that the situation had been misunderstood. I'm sure I shall find it an interesting experience to take tea in the servants' hall. It will remind me of my old days as a footman at Southwell.
All right, Betsy, you can lay the table. Mr. Hudson, perhaps you care to stay and take tea with Mr. Makepeace and myself, just for this afternoon.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenton, but I must unpack for the captain. He'll be wanting to change since we travelled down by motor, and it was rather dusty.
Well, perhaps you'd care to return in half an hour.
Thank you, Mrs. Kenton. That will be very pleasant.
Sherry, sir?
You haven't got any cocktails, have you?
No, sir.
Oh, well.
It really is too deliciously amusing to see Dolly Newbury and Bunny, like two over-anxious sheepdogs, trying to herd James Bellamy in the direction of Miss Gray.
And he keeps slipping out of the pen and joining Diana, leaving Bunny with Miss Gray.
Oh, poor Bunny. I'm sure he's invited Diana down with the express intention of getting engaged to her before the weekend was over. Wouldn't it be too amusing if she got engaged to James Bellamy instead? Shall we see if we can contrive it?
Why not?
I hope they're looking after you all right, Hudson.
Quite satisfactory, thank you, sir. I'm acquainted with his lordship's valet, and the housekeeper seems to be a very agreeable woman.
Good. Just as long as they're making you comfortable.
Very comfortable, thank you, sir.
What time are we starting?
At 9 o'clock, sir.
Are we going on after lunch?
No, sir, I understand the ladies are driving out to join you for luncheon. It is pleasant to see Lady Diana Russell again, sir.
Yes, very pleasant.
She was always a great favourite of her ladyship's. I remember her ladyship saying to me once, Lady Diana is coming to dinner, Hudson. We must ask Mrs. Bridges to make that raspberry pudding she's so fond of.
I don't remember Lady Diana dining at Eaton Place.
I think it was when you were in India, sir. Yes, I remember when Lady Diana arrived, she asked if you were going to be there. And she seemed very disappointed when she heard that you were not. as it is rather a chilly morning, sir, I think perhaps you should wear a Guernsey under your jacket. I'll get it out so that you can put it on after breakfast.
Well, thank you, Hudson.
Mr. Makepeace, did you want any other glasses besides the claret?
Huh? What?
We've packed the claret glasses. Do you want tumblers as well?
Don't you come here asking me questions. I'll tell you what to do soon enough. Don't you come bothering me.
No, Mr. Makepeace. I hope you're putting in some rugs and chairs, Mr. Makepeace. The gentleman will sit on the ground, and I don't want his lordship's new suit all nasty green stains.
The ground? He won't sit on the ground. Not with his arthritis. He'd never get up again.
I'm talking about his young lordship, Mr. Makepeace. His late lordship is dead.
Oh, you know he's dead. What are you talking about?
Morning, Miss Makepeace.
Good morning. Good morning. Who are you? Do I know you?
Mr. Hudson, butler to Mr. Richard Bellamy and the late Lady Marjorie Bellamy.
Ah, yes. You're guests in the house, are they?
Captain Bellamy is staying here.
Ah, yes. That's what I thought. Just tasting the claret. Your lordship's very particular about his claret. Always has been. I remember for the old Queen's Jubilee, we gave a supper to 150 estate workers. And his lordship said, give them claret, Makepeace he said. Let them try the real thing for once.
I dare say they would just as soon have had beer.
That's what I said. And all I said, they'd just as soon have beer, I said. But he said, let them try the real thing for once. Of course, it wasn't his best claret. Do I know you?
Hudson, Mr. Makepeace. I had the pleasure of taking tea with you and Mrs. Kenton yesterday.
Ah, yes. I thought I knew your face.
Well, Bunny says the weather's been very bad this summer. A lot of young birds died.
We've had a lot of trouble with vermin at Bromsbury.
Good God.
Morning, Major Danby. Morning, Mr. Weinberg. Those gaiters of yours are going to get a bit muddy, aren't they? My man's very good with gaiters, you know. He used to be with Lord Harcourt.
Really? Is that a diamond type in?
Looks like it.
It's no use. I can't get used to seeing the fellow here. I mean, good God, we might as well invite one's tailor.
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning.
We should have good sport today, I think.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm looking forward to trying my new Purdy guns. All magnificent pair, special short barrels. You must see them. What guns do you use, Captain Bellamy?
Me? Oh, I use the same gun I've used for 10 years. Hammer action, built for my grandfather in 1885. I don't particularly want to change now.
Weinberg, I hear your firm's financing this new railway in Uganda. Is that likely to be profitable soon?
I'm afraid I have no information on that at the moment.
Come on, you chaps. Early start. Come.
Extraordinary these Jews are. They never talk about anything but money.
Or on the big wood.
Number one.
Well, Helen.
Morning.
7.
Lovely morning.
2.
Number 5. Thank you. 3.
6. Weinberg, you're next to James, all right?
Oh, jolly good.
You never know. He might hit a tail feather or two. I'm glad you could come, James. We've not seen you about much lately. Still, I suppose in the circumstances you've not really had much choice. I gathered Diana especially saw to it that you were asked.
Did she?
So I believe. May not be true, of course. That's you, I believe.
Oh, Mrs. Cochrane-Danby, I find your piece of sky. That is almost too exciting to bear. Perhaps you'd very kindly put it in for me, Miss Gray. Yes, of course.
Oh, it really is appallingly cold.
Miss Gray, I wonder if you'll ring the bell for the footman to make up the fire. Yes, of course. Do you think we should?
Well, since the alternative is to freeze to death, I'm quite sure we should.
Oh, yes.
Oh, shooting parties are really such a bore.
Either one is left alone to amuse oneself until tea time, or else one goes to have lunch in a muddy field, to the ruination of one's boots and gloves. And the men come in at 4 o'clock with splitting headaches, fit for nothing but dozing in front of the fire and tumbling into bed, usually their own. I really don't know why I come. Don't you? At least we know why James Bellamy's come, and I don't mean for the shooting. Oh, my dear Diana, surely you know.
No, what?
Well, James said he wouldn't come at first, but then Bunny told him you would be here, so he changed his mind. Yeah, now I've betrayed a confidence. Oh, it really can't be helped.
Well, it's a long time since you and I were out in the country together, Hudson.
Indeed it is, sir. Makes a pleasant change.
Tell me, do you ever regret not becoming a gamekeeper like your father?
I have never believed in dwelling on what might have been, sir.
I'm going for a walk.
Over you, sir.
Hudson, if you see Mr. Weinberg pointing his gun in this direction, fall flat on your face. I certainly intend to.
Very good, sir.
Yeah, I was going to bring you home.
It should be interesting.
Than I thought. Okay, tonight I don't think he's coming. He said he sleeps in his dressing room so Kitty wouldn't hear him.
Taking his shoes off. Oh, I enjoyed that. Even if Cocky didn't. Shall I take you back to your room?
Don't bother.
Good night.
You know Bunny wants to marry me.
Yes, he's not nearly good enough for you.
No.
Goodbye, Mr. Hudson. It's been a great pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for making my stay so enjoyable.
Mr. Hudson, I hope to hear from you very shortly.
I say, Diana, I know you think I'm a fearful bore, but,
What?
well, Diana, will you marry me?
Why not? Oh, you're back.
Hello, Hazel.
Did you have a good time?
Have you ever been to a party and thought you were enjoying yourself, and then suddenly wanted to come home?
Hudson, thank heavens you're back. I've just received this letter from Lady Southwell. She's arriving this evening.
In London, sir?
Here, Hudson. She's coming up for some charity or other tomorrow morning and wants to stay here.
Very good, sir.
Not very good at all. Not with a group of liberal gentlemen dining here, including Mr. Churchill. Her ladyship would be mortally offended.
Quite so, sir.
But our business is important, and I don't want to put the dinner off.
Might I suggest, sir, that Captain James might escort Lady Southwell to the theatre?
The theatre?
A sweet Nell of Old Drury, Mr. Fred Terry. I believe Lady Southwell very much admires them.
Yes, you're right, Hudson. Her ladyship has a particular weakness for Fred Terry. It's extraordinary, really. Is Captain James free?
I asked him if he had any engagements for this evening, sir, and he said that he had not. Then perhaps we could prepare a cold supper upstairs in the drawing room.
Yes. And her ladyship need never meet my guests at all. Hudson, you're a wonder. Miss Forrest has gone to the British Museum to check some documents for me. Perhaps when she returns, we'll consult with her about the arrangements. Oh, I suppose her ladyship could have Miss Elizabeth along. Oh, but then she's bringing that extremely disagreeable companion of hers. What do you know about her?
I think Rose will be able to manage Miss Hodges, sir.
Yes, I expect she will. Hudson, I don't know what we should do without you. Send Edward round for the theatre tickets, will you? And telephone Captain James.
Very good, sir.
Oh, by the way, Hudson, Captain James tells me you had a bit of a domestic crisis at Somerby Park and that you saved the day.
Hardly that, sir.
Well, he said you were a pillar of strength, and he was very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, Mr. Hudson, I didn't like to mention it at the servants' hall, but Edward was a bit hurt that you didn't give him the key of the wine cellar. He said it made him feel that you didn't trust him.
I'll have a word with him. I think I was wrong. It's good for him to learn to take responsibility. Thank you, Mrs. Bridges.
Oh, Mr. Hudson, it is good to have you back. We've all missed you. I expect you enjoyed yourself at Somerby Park. Nice to be working in a big house again.
They've made a pleasant change, Mrs. Bridges. For a while.